I'll start this off by saying I grew up completely 100% adamant that the paranormal isn't real, it can all be rationalized, and that people who believed in it haven't thought about it hard enough. I live in the Midwest. I live on a small rural lot between a cornfield and a small forest, in a camper. I've lived in this county my entire life. I know the entire county like the back of my hand. This being said, I've come to the conclusion that my experiences around the rural and wooded parts of this county are crawlers. I'm 100% sure of it. I've had many encounters actually, none back to back, but they happen frequently. There is a forest park in the middle of the town I always hated at night since I was little. As I got older, my cousin and I thought getting scared was really fun. We'd go there at night on purpose, but never lasted long. I always felt like I was being watched. This, on top of urban legends of people going missing here at night, made me feel really uneasy. Fast forward to a few years ago, I got married and am settling into life as a husband. I'd take my large all-black German Shepherd, Fenrir, on walks with me at night. I always walk towards the park, but I usually don't enter into it. The first time something weird happened was 5 years ago. I was walking Fenrir, and the woods to the front and to the right of me went silent. To the left and behind me was a neighborhood edge and a small playground. My dog started acting super anxious. He's usually a very stoic and quiet dog. He's 120 pounds and built like a tank, looks very intimidating, and he knows it. I heard rustling in the woods following me, and I felt like I was being stalked. I ran home, and that's the end of the first encounter. I had a few more encounters like that, but last year things really amped up. I was on a walk around 11:30 p.m. with Fenrir, my wife, and our little newer dog Booger. He's a terrier chi mix. We are walking down the same path, and about 3 blocks away from the woods, 4 or so deer are sprinting out of the trees into the street towards us, and they seem terrified. Then I hear what I can only describe as what sounded like a human trying to mimic the sounds of a monkey. I thought it was silly until recently, when I read that other guy's story who heard the same fucking thing. We laughed it off as some kids playing around. Once we get up to the woods and are walking parallel, we can clearly see 2 reflective eyes and a silhouette staring us down from the tree line. We also heard a deep growl and then like a hissing sound, but it wasn't super high-pitched or anything. Both our dogs acknowledged this as well. Finn stared and Booger growled a bit. I made a Facebook post on the community's Facebook group, and other people told similar stories around town. Around this time I got a job as a tour guide and maintenance for rail explorers. I am working there again this year as well. We start April 1st. Basically, they take unused or tour-specific railroad sections that aren't used federally, and they have these pedal carts with motor assist on them you can use to explore the tracks. It's super cool and super fun. The one I work at is like 5 minutes from where I live, and it goes through the woods in an inaccessible part of the county unless you float down the river and hike up steep, loose dirt hills. You go under one old car bridge, and you go over 2 multi-hundred-foot length old train bridges. The first one is larger and taller, and it's about 150 feet off the ground above the forest. The second goes over the river. About 6 months into the job and it's full. We work until midnight sometimes, with the last tour leaving around 9 p.m. That means the last tour for the last 2 months of the year are in complete darkness. The way that job operates is with 6 employees. 4 get on the lead bike and 2 get on the rear bike. From the lead bike, we drop off 1 person at the busy intersection so they can flag traffic, and 1 person gets dropped off at the large train bridge that goes over the woods. The person at the bridge gives a short safety speech to the customers who stop and go one at a time over the bridge. The employee carts are much faster than the customer ones. We all have walkie-talkies, and we usually have these battery-powered floodlights on stands we use so the customers can see us, and light up safety vests. On one particular night, We were behind by 20 or so minutes. Instead of leaving the depot at sunset, we were leaving at dusk. I was stationed at the high bridge. By the time we reached the bridge, it was pitch black aside from the stars providing a little light. My co-workers dropped me off and waited with me until the first customer arrived. I gave the little speech to that first cart of 4. I chatted with them a little bit. I was trying to buy some time and wait for the next customer cart. So there wasn't a massive gap for my co-workers who have to flip the bikes around. After a few minutes, I let these customers leave, and I was alone. I was alone for 20 minutes. I used the radio so many times, but it was static for everybody. One of the only times we've ever had an issue like that as well. I kept seeing movement in the tree line. I kept hearing fast footsteps all around me in every direction. I had the floodlight on above my head, so everyone and everything could see me, but I couldn't see shit. I turned off the floodlight and used my personal flashlight. I kept seeing quick glimpses of pale skin moving quickly, but right when I started seeing stuff, I could hear the next customer cart coming close. So I turned the light back on and waited for them to come around the corner. When they pulled up, I noticed they had a little boy with them, and he's scared of the dark. I'm terrified at this point, but have to act appropriate, even more so because of this boy. I do not want to scare him. As I'm finishing my speech, I hear movement right behind me and say, "Jesus fucking Christ," and spin around with my flashlight on instinct. Poor kid. I told them it was probably just a deer and they are good to go across the bridge. That same night, the person stationed at the intersection. This isn't like an in-town intersection, it's very rural. It's right next to a massive cornfield. He is Native American and was very in tune with his culture. He told me privately a few weeks later that he heard rustling in the cornfield and whatever was out there was whispering his name and trying to get him into the field. He was also without communication for those 20 minutes, but he wasn't in the woods and could see a lot better than me. Another time, me and that same co-worker were headed back on the front cart. We were away ahead, so we stopped the cart in the middle of the high bridge. It sounds scary. I am a bit afraid of heights, and this bridge has massive gaps between the planks you could fit through. But after doing it so often, you get used to it. It was a clear night, and we were watching the stars and having small talk. Then it goes silent. We are 100 and so feet in the air above the woods. We can hear for miles. The dogs barking across the river 2 miles can be heard without even seeing the houses. We hear what sounds like a human mimicking a monkey noise, and we hear growling. He looks at me, completely seriously, and tells me in a stern tone that we need to get out of here right now. I drive the fuck out of there, and he moved states to Nevada shortly after this. A few other things happened here and there and to co-workers as well. Each of my co-workers have at least one story. I'm only sharing mine in this post, otherwise it'd be too long. A few months go by and it's late fall, around the middle of November. I drive through that park in town a lot when I just want to go for a drive. I had my dog Fenrir with me and it's around 2 a.m. I can't sleep, so I'm listening to a Melvins CD and driving leisurely through the park. As soon as I get past the entrance gates, I feel really uneasy and weird. I'm not easily scared. Going to that park at night makes me feel a primal fear. It's beyond fight or flight. I have never felt that way in my life anywhere else, ever. And I feel it every time I'm there. I'm driving through the park, and I've rolled the windows up a lot more. Fenrir can still poke his head out, but can't leap out. As I go deeper into the woods, I feel worse and worse. I decided not to turn around because I'm already past the halfway point. Turning around would make me stay in the woods longer. I started speeding where there weren't turns I couldn't see around. I round the last corner and what I saw made me have nightmares for months. There was a pale, skinny humanoid. Tall and lanky, not quite human. Fucking crawling on its hands and feet, but it was crawling fast as fuck. 20 miles per hour type shit. We don't have bears here. The only animal that size are large humans and deer. That wasn't a deer. It went from my right, crossed the street, and went into the tree line. Fenrir saw it too. He doesn't bark at animals. Not even other dogs. He went ballistic. He was trying to force himself out of the small gap in the window, nearly foaming at the mouth and snarling. He never ever acts like that. I'm a certified dog trainer, and I've raised him from birth. Most recently, I've become obsessed with this park. I've walked there at night from my camper to the park with Fenrir. I'll never do it again. I didn't see a figure this time. As I was entering the park, a massive owl flew by my head so close I could have smacked it mid-flight. This made me feel weird for some reason. As soon as I get into the park, I feel extremely weird, anxious, and nauseous. I walk a few hundred yards to the only streetlight in the entire park, and I turn around and face the woods. Me and Fenrir stand there, frozen, for like 10 minutes. The silence was deafening. Any time I heard anything, I'd jump. Finn was anxious as hell too. He kept staring into a certain spot in the woods, a ways off. I swear I saw eyes in there every once in a while. I built up the courage to walk out, and I haven't gone back since. It'll be interesting to see what happens at my job this year. I wanted to add that the county I live in is packed full of abandoned mines. Hundreds of them. This next story is called My Dark Sight. I've been a troubled person for most of my life, I'd say. Plagued with dark sight, meaning my vision sometimes veers into the spirit world. All I see, though, are shadows, silhouettes of souls that once were whole. They roam all around me. Many have tried to enter our world through me, but I always fought back and blocked them off. Mom tried her whole life to be there for me and to understand. She did what she could, but it wasn't enough. Dad certainly didn't make anything better. He'd either be drunk as a skunk or high up on cloud 9 whenever I needed him. He never laid a hand on me, but he was fucking useless. He promised to make amends for his actions, promised to get better and be there for me. 2 weeks later, he was dead. Overdose. So much for that. At the funeral, a shadow formed on his grave. Let me in. Nice try, asshole. But you are staying put. After that, Mom decided to go on a holiday retreat. As for me, I was honestly relieved. I'd be alone, at least for a little while, and the thought pleased me. I slept like a baby for the first time in a while, but that was interrupted when there was loud banging on the front door. I checked through the window. 3 hooded men were trying to come in. "We know you're in there. Give us your stash." Great. Dad's drug buddies have come back to collect. "I don't have anything." Dad shot it all up, I said, hiding behind the window drapes. "Well, then you'll have to make it up on your end," one of them yelled out. Then they started kicking the door down. I ran to my room, hoping to reach my phone. They were inside now, I could hear them. "A pretty girl like you would be worth far more than drugs, bitch." I felt my heart sink into my stomach. The moonlight on my bedroom wall started to disappear, and a shadow formed. "Let me in." They started beating down my door. "Fine, Dad, now's your chance." Whatever light remaining in my room was snuffed out, and then a figure formed in the center. My room door finally gave in. "Come here, bitch." One of them threw a punch at me, but the figure stopped him. He held his arm down. They all stared in horror. The figure broke his hand in an instant. The other 2 started running away, but he intercepted them. He was much faster. He grabbed them and banged their bodies together like they were 2-meat piñatas. Then they were all on the ground, incapacitated. The figure came over to me. I started fearfully taking steps back. He grabbed me from my shoulder, softly, and placed his finger on my heart. and with a blink, he disappeared into the darkness. I guess you finally came through, Dad. This next story is called Hell's Waiting Room. I died years ago. Unfortunately, Satan hasn't made time for me yet. So I'm just hanging around in his waiting room. The wall paint looks like vomit. I'm sure the devil himself picked out the most terrible color he could find. The air is thick, and everything is boring. So boring. Other ghosts are hanging around as well, staring into the abyss. Halfway disintegrated already. Most of them are spiteful dickheads who do nothing but whine about their previous lives. It was never their fault, of course. Yeah, sure, Margaret. The devil made you beat your 6-year-old with a metal pipe. Exactly, Tommy. You had no choice. You simply had to disinherit your daughter for being gay. You're the true victim here, Werner. Your own father hurt you, so of course you did the same to your kids. You didn't know what love was. Deep down, you're all good people. Like anyone buys that horse shit. I'm not like them. I know I deserve being here. I have always been a spiteful hag, an abusive mother, an unfaithful wife, but I did love my Heinrich, in my own shitty way. I care about him enough to be happy he hasn't joined me. He was a good man, tried to be at least. I, on the other hand, deserve getting tortured, but I do not deserve looking at that terrible green for a second longer. In that regard, I am like the other ghosts. The walls drive us all mad over time. I squeeze my eyes shut. Mrs. Rosenthal, you aren't allowed to sleep yet. A demon snarls. I wince. You and the other guests are playing charades in 5 minutes. The demon uses a sing-song voice that makes my skin crawl. It's going to be fun. And that's how I spent my days here. 1 week feels like a year. 1 year feels like an eternity. I watch the ghosts lose their minds one by one. The demons either don't care or they take a silent joy in watching us falter. But I persevere. I'm torn between impatience and dread. I want to move on. I want the demons and the ghosts and the terrible walls gone. But if even the waiting room is so horrible, how will hell itself be? Sometimes faces from the past visit me. I know they're not real. I tell them that. They get mad. They scream a lot. But this morning, a very real person came for me. Look, Mrs. Rosenthal. The demon was smiling so brightly that I could see all its shiny teeth. Your husband is going to share a room with you. Heinrich smiled as well. That dumb, lovely smile. He had no clue what was coming for him when Satan's assistant clapped its gloved hands together. Welcome. We are so happy that you are joining St. Michael's Senior Residency. This next story is called The Eclipse Child. I never really believed in anything supernatural. I mean, the world is weird enough without adding ghosts or whatever into the mix. But then there's Solara, my niece, born exactly at the moment of totality during a solar eclipse, when the moon completely covers the sun. That should have been my first clue that things were about to get a whole lot weirder. Solara wasn't like other kids. Sure, every proud aunt thinks her niece is special, but Solara, she was different on a level that science couldn't touch. Toys would turn on by themselves around her, lights flickered, and the TV changed channels in a rapid-fire succession whenever she threw a tantrum. It was like living in a haunted house, but with a toddler instead of a ghost. The first few years we chalked it up to electrical issues. Old house, you know? But deep down, I think we all knew it was Solara. How could we not? Things got really strange when she started talking, telling us about the shadow friends she played with, friends we couldn't see. That's when the nightmares started. Not just bad dreams, but vivid, terror-inducing nightmares that left you afraid to close your eyes again. One night, things escalated. I was babysitting Solara, now a precocious 6-year-old with an unnerving awareness in her eyes. We were watching cartoons, the room bathed in the soft glow of the TV, when suddenly the screen went black. Not just turned off, but a deep consuming darkness that seemed to swallow the light around it. "Solara, did you do that?" I asked, trying to keep the tremble out of my voice. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked up to the TV, placing her tiny hand on the screen. The darkness seemed to pulse at her touch, and for a moment I saw something. A flicker of movement, shadows twisting and writhing behind the glass. "They want to play," Solara whispered, turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was the most chilling thing I'd ever seen. The nightmares got worse after that. They weren't just dreams, they felt like warnings, or maybe invitations. People around us started to act strange, forgetting things, staring off into space with that same empty smile Solara had shown me. I started researching, desperate for answers. Solar eclipses, ancient myths, anything that might explain or help. What I found chilled me to the bone. Tales of doorways opening, of creatures that lived in the darkness between stars, waiting for a chance to slip through. Waiting for a child born under the darkened sun. I don't know how to protect Solara, or if I even should. Is she just an innocent caught in something much bigger? Or is she the key to something that should never be unleashed? All I know is that the next eclipse is coming, and I'm afraid of what will come with it. It's not just looking to play, it wants out. This next story is called "They Buried the Wrong Body." An earthy smell seeps through the wooden boards and protrudes my nostrils as my eyes abruptly open. I take a sharp inhale of breath, coughing and groaning as I hit my head on a hard surface. My eyes, aided by the slightest bit of light exposed through the cracks of the wood, adjust to the darkness. My body is clothed in an uncomfortable formal suit, and my arms lay crossed over my chest. I feel the metallic rings on my fingers and a necklace brush against my neck as I move my head. The muffled sobs and quiet voices steal my attention. I hear the undeniable voice of a funeral officiant as he speaks praise on my name. Panic begins to set in as the situation takes hold in my mind. I'm being buried alive. I begin to scream incoherently, coughing as dirt is thrown onto my claustrophobic prison, falling through the cracked wood lid and onto my face. The muffled voices become distant and quieter as pile after pile of damp soil is thrown on top of me, on top of my coffin. I pushed on the lid, shutting my eyes as more dirt fell onto my face. I screamed again. I screamed until my voice was hoarse, until my throat burned, and I had no more tears left in my eyes. Soon more dirt fell on top of me, the voices becoming distant and quieter. It was hard to breathe. I couldn't even cry or scream. There was no use in either. I could hear the barely audible voices begin to leave along with my sight as the darkness took hold of me. My chest raised in shallow breaths as I silently begged for more air, for those who buried me to realize their mistake, for someone to rescue me. My last thoughts were that of despair. This next story is called "Ex-Girlfriend Tried to Kill Me." It was a Tuesday night, the clock striking 9 p.m, and I found myself holed up in my mum's house, buried under textbooks, cramming for an upcoming test. Hunger gnawed at my stomach, so I ventured into the kitchen in search of leftovers. But as I opened the fridge, a chill greeted me. The window was open, a gust of wind swirling through the room. Shrugging it off, I closed the window and popped my meal into the microwave. Just as I was about to settle in front of the TV, my phone buzzed with an incoming text message. Annoyed at the interruption, I glanced at the screen to see a message from my dad, Aaron, asking for my help. Now my parents were divorced, so late-night calls from Dad were rare and always a bit unsettling. But duty called, and I set off to his house, the deserted streets of our neighborhood stretching out before me. Approaching Dad's front door, a sense of unease settled over me, but I brushed it aside. Inside, I found him struggling with his computer, a task I quickly offered to assist with. As Dad went to grab a glass of water, a notification on the computer caught my attention, a motion detected by the security camera outside. Yet, when I checked the footage, it revealed nothing but a passing pedestrian. With Dad's thanks and assurances that he was fine, I headed back home, the unease I felt earlier growing stronger with each step. But I pushed it aside, focusing on the looming test awaiting me. Back at Mom's house, I dove back into my studies, trying to shake off the events of the evening. Yet, the ringing of the doorbell shattered the silence, jolting me from my concentration. Confused by the late-night visitor, I cautiously made my way downstairs, only to find nobody at the door. Opening it tentatively, I was met with emptiness, a chill wind whispering through the doorway. Fear prickled at the back of my neck as I retreated inside, my mind racing with unanswered questions. Turning to the security footage for answers, I was met with a chilling realization. The doorbell's ringing was absent from the recordings. Am I going crazy? I thought to myself. Doubt gnawed at me as I grappled with the inexplicable events unfolding around me. And then, a shadow passed by the window, sending a shiver down my spine. I went downstairs to the kitchen, and not knowing what else to do, I grabbed a kitchen knife. I ventured outside, my senses on high alert. But the night offered no answers, only the distant wail of police sirens. A text from Mom shattered the silence, revealing the true danger lurking in the shadows. Photos from vigilant neighbors painted a chilling picture, a figure skulking around the house, unseen and unknown. Before I could react, a sudden impact sent me sprawling to the ground. Standing above me, wild-eyed and brandishing a knife, was my ex-girlfriend, Caitlin. Love turned to madness in her eyes. In a desperate struggle for survival, I fought back against the onslaught of violence, disbelief and horror warring within me. Salvation arrived in the form of flashing lights and the stern voices of authority as the police descended upon the scene, separating us. As the chaos subsided and the truth came to light, I found myself grappling with the aftermath of the night's events. My former love now incarcerated, my sense of security shattered, and my faith in the world irreparably shaken. Haunted by the memory of that fateful night, I carry its scars with me, a reminder of the thin veil that separates the familiar comforts of home from the lurking dangers that lie just beyond the threshold. And though the darkness may recede with the dawn, the shadows of fear and uncertainty linger long after the night has passed. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, but the memory of that night remained etched in my mind like a scar, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of the mundane. I tried to move on, to bury myself in my studies and the familiarity of everyday life. But the events of that night had left a mark on me, a lingering sense of unease that refused to fade. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at the slightest sound, haunted by the fear that Caitlin's madness would return to haunt me once more. Yet, despite my best efforts to push the memories aside, they continued to haunt my dreams, creeping into my thoughts when I least expected it. It was a lesson learned the hard way, a reminder that danger could lurk around any corner, even in the places we least expect.